Alrighty everyone, welcome back. We are now getting closer to the end of November of 2022, and with Andor Season 1 now officially over and Lucasfilm already beginning filming for Season 2, that's going to last, by the way, until summer of 2023. They're planning on getting this thing out by the fall of 2024. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, let's not forget about what has happened with the recent Disney CEO shakeup, with Bob Iger now back in and Chapek out. A lot of fans have been very skeptical and worried about the future of Star Wars. Now, we've gone over what Bob Iger said, and thankfully there's not much to worry about, as he officially put it out there and put it to rest that he will not be sabotaging anything that Chapek created or planned out for John and Dave to have a lot of creative power and a lot of creative control over these upcoming projects. So John and Dave will remain as is, and will remain to have the capability of doing whatever in the world they want to do. And that brings us to the latest subject of what has happened behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm, and how this does actually concern Kathleen Kennedy, and exactly what recently happened with, of course, a particular Star Wars project. Now, for those of you that don't know, Kathleen Kennedy has a couple of Star Wars projects under her creative control. That, of course, being the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. Alright, so those two projects she has full power over, both creatively and financially. However, given that John and Dave essentially took over Lucasfilm in a very unique way, they have a lot of different privileges, they're able to call the shots, very similar decisions that a president of the company like Kathleen Kennedy would be able to make. And that brings us to exactly what they recently did. Now, with both Disney and Lucasfilm focusing on new Star Wars shows that will take many core elements from Legends, creators John and Dave have a very big plan for the future of the franchise. Now, it's noted that as of now, Disney CEO Bob Iger is fulfilling Chapek's initial plan by allowing John and Dave to gain more and more privileges over at Lucasfilm to properly call the shots on the creative end of Star Wars. However, it's described that Favreau and Filoni recently cancelled a big Star Wars TV show that was in limbo for a very long time behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm, that belonged to Kathleen Kennedy, that was supposed to be her third Star Wars TV show after The Acolyte. This show is said to have been a Star Wars Eclipse series that would be based on the events before the planned video game in the works that is based within the High Republic. Kathleen Kennedy's Eclipse series was going to focus on something substantially different than the game's story. However, as it was going to serve as a prequel to the game, the plan by Kennedy was to get the series released at the same time as the game by 2024. John and Dave recently met up with the board of Disney and finalized the cancellation of the show, as it was going to focus completely away from anything Star Wars related. Now, let me just pause here quick for a second. Now, the thing about all of this is that Kathleen Kennedy was supposed to have a third Star Wars show. We talked about this many times in the past, and how she kept fighting Disney board members, she kept fighting the Disney higher-ups on keeping that slot for her, keeping that, capability for her to have a third Star Wars show after The Acolyte. And they weren't having it, they didn't want to listen to her, and that's good and all, because let's face it, this show, as I go, more into details about this, you're going to eventually find out that it would really lack the Star Wars philosophy and the Star Wars magic, so to speak, that George Lucas created way back when in 1977. So, with the High Republic, I don't know if you guys ever saw the cinematic, alright, for that video game. You don't have to be into video games, by the way, but in that cinematic, it gives you a sense of what the story could have been, but Kathleen Kennedy flipped things around and made it out to be a prequel to that game, where it's not even going to focus on a conflict, a war, or let alone a battle or a fight. And that's where we're going to really get into details here about this, and why I think that this show would have been a very big bore, and it would have really drove fans away, without a doubt. So, moving on. Now, Kennedy wanted to focus on the show having no battles, fights, or wars for that matter, and wanted it to be a story of peace. Alright, so she wanted to make the actual story 100% about peace itself. Now, look, everybody loves peace, I get it, but this is a franchise called Star Wars. It's got literally wars in the title. There's always some kind of conflict in these shows or films, even in The Mandalorian, So, moving along. Eclipse was going to focus on the peace of the Jedi and their time before a major conflict comes during the events of that game. This series was also going to feature Geode the Rock as one of the main characters as well, as how Kathleen Kennedy came this close to making this force, of course, hold a conscience. Something that Favreau and Filoni absolutely disagree with, by the way. Now, that, I think, would have been a terrible mistake. In case you guys missed what I just said, basically what Kathleen Kennedy wanted to do in that show is to essentially give the Force a conscience. Like, not something like Bendu or anything like that. I'm talking about the Force itself. The Force that surrounds all living beings. She wanted to give that an actual conscience. And I think that would have been a terrible mistake. I think that would have truly put the final nail in the coffin of what George Lucas's outlook on what the Force really is. And it just would have put it into pretty much, 6 feet under. Now, when you look at everything related to that too, the High Republic is a very touchy Star Wars era. You have a lot of fans that do not like it. There are, however, a group of fans that love that era. Some of you might be here right now, and that's fine, by the way, guys. I mean, everyone has an opinion, let's face it. It's reality. Everyone's gonna like what they're like. You're not gonna change people's minds, and I get that. So, if you like it, hey, that's awesome. But the High Republic, I read every single book, I read every single comic. It's just not Star Wars to me. It just kind of shifts away from the traditional philosophy is all I'm saying. It is different. It's very much different than what you are used to in comparison to, let's say, the prequels or the originals, or even the sequels for that matter. I felt that even the sequels were better than the High Republic books, but that's just my opinion again. But overall, I'm glad that they came to a conclusion to finally cancel this series that was going to make all the wrong decisions under Kathleen Kennedy's leadership. Obviously, Kennedy was very disappointed about this, and with her already being, in the final stages of getting kicked out by Disney by 2023, we've been talking about this for a couple of months now, that by Q3 of 2023, she is going to get the boot over at Lucasfilm, and somebody else is going to be coming in. And what Bob Iger is doing is that he is following up with Chapek's plan. This is all Chapek's plan right from the get-go. To get Kathleen Kennedy out, bring somebody else in. And now what Bob Iger is trying to do, this is traditional Bob Iger, is that once Kathleen Kennedy gets out, they want to cover it up as her voluntarily stepping down instead of actually getting fired to prevent, a lot of fan, opinions getting out there that Disney's not going to like. So overall, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you guys have to say about all this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.